Alright, well, I'm writing this right after finishing the second season of SAC 2045, which literally just came out today. Having had enough time to compile my thoughts on the entire show, now that I went back to my previous video on it from last year, I want this to be a video without any filler or the slow introduction most of my videos consist of, because this is going to act as more of a continuation of the first video on the topic. This is because I was originally cautiously optimistic about the second season of Netflix's attempt with Ghost in the Shell, and so this video will act as a review blended with an analysis of the entire show. So if you haven't seen the second season or my previous video, I recommend you go watch the video on the first season before this one, because otherwise you might feel a bit lost. I also do not wish to spoil this season in its entirety, because I hope that once you've watched this video, you may want to visit or even revisit the whole show for yourselves. And so with that said and done, what do I think of the second season of Ghost in the Shell SAC 2045? Shit, man, it's pretty good. One of the many problems I had with the first season was the plot and its payoff, and that there really wasn't a payoff. It purposefully ended on a cliffhanger and was setting up too much, while still unsure of what it really wanted to be. As out of all the first season's 12 episodes, it had only one episode that acted as a somewhat standalone one, that built up its world and the character of Bato to great results. However, it didn't feel necessary nor earned due to it being placed right between a lackluster starter arc and the show's primary arc, which would then continue on into the entirety of Season 2. However, I feel the title was purposefully shortened to SAC in order to distance itself from the very theory that show's title brings up. That's why there are literally no standalone episodes this time around. This season especially determined that although it is a far distant sequel set in the same timeline as the original show, it does not wish to abide by the same narrative structure. I would also say that this time, this season is much easier to follow, because the original cause of effect for the first season's world and where its characters and countries came from now comes full circle. This is because this second season focuses on clearing out the mystery of various events such as the simultaneous global default and how it even happened. The way it does this is through the use of finally introducing the AI that caused this default in the first place, named 1A84, which in turn helps clarify the reason for the post-humans' existence as well as their purpose. The introduction of 1A84 further brought the story to actually have the sustainable war so frequently mentioned in the first season actually be finally shown firsthand, with various countries, in particular the United States of America, or as they like to call it in the Ghost in the Shell universe, the American Empire, act as the antagonistic force that drives the posthumans to do what they do. And they're also what leads Section 9 to become a crucial part of depicting the rising conflict between foreign nations. Furthermore, on the posthuman side, the character from the previous season named Takashi Shimamura now became a crucial benefactor in depicting the messages mentioned in the previous season via the use of George Orwell's novel, 1984.
This is like George Orwell's book, 1984.
This is done through the show focusing on the book's concepts around human thought and holding ideas to the absolute. These themes are the most prominent topics the show builds itself up toward, and is what ultimately made me enjoy this season, as it oozes not just standalone complex, but also Ghost in the Shell as a whole, due to a difficult to digest and complex philosophical conclusion, leading us on a journey of self-discovery and what exactly the messages even mean, and where does and can the truth really lie. All in all, the plot is much more solid and straightforward, whilst finally showing the philosophical aspects Ghost in the Shell is so well known for. And if that was your main gripe with the first season, I'd say that was mostly improved upon in the sequel. Just don't expect all of your questions to be answered, as maybe your answers lie more over within yourself than the show. Originally, I was mostly satisfied with the way the characters, old and new, were done in SAC 2045, with the exception of Purin's character, as it's well out of character in a show meant to be more realistic than its medium's alternatives. This time around, I'm somewhat conflicted on characters because of the odd focus on specific ones and the lack of focus on others. This is most prominent in Purin, as she has been given a humongous role and importance to the narrative. Her awkward and clumsy nature stays more or less intact. However, she is strengthened via her relationship with Bato, and it is this relationship that kind of makes Bato more of the main character than Major this time around. Purin and Bato's relationship borders on surrogate father and daughter, which is personally, for me, not too bad a thing, as Purin's reason for joining Section 9 and her impeccable skills are revealed to us through this subplot. This also further helps permit Bato to be shown as a man with a big heart under a cold exterior, which then helps stay consistent with both the previous season and his overall character throughout the mythos. This writing choice helps me much less despise Purin being a member of the group, and instead now makes me more bitter about her stereotypical mannerisms and stupid acts. And to show an example of this, I have to quickly go into spoiler territory, so if you don't want to wish to be spoiled, skip to this time on the screen right now. Are you gone? Okay. What irks me is that Purin is made more empathetic, yet she does some of the dumbest, most easily avoidable things due to melodrama. This is most evident in her literal death. Originally, I was thinking she's not that stupid to get herself killed. But no, the writers purposefully revoked logic from someone who was originally told to be a prodigy by having her jump in excitement whilst being held at gunpoint.
Oh my God!
Due to her lack of caution and inability to understand the situation, she is killed on the spot, and I mean literally gunned down.
No! You get out of that hole!
This moment also borders on full-on manipulation of the audience, with us never being too sure of what led up to her death as being true. Was she a posthuman at the time of escaping Section 9's containment? Did she suddenly stop being a posthuman after a certain amount of time? This manipulation is further seen through her mannerisms completely changing during this questionable period of time before her death. Was her changing character a result of a sudden posthuman transformation? We don't know, and instead are left baffled by the lack of information delivered to us about how or why she did the things she did, and why she had to die as a result. Aside from this major inconsistency with Purin, I have a few gripes with a few other characters, primarily Standard. In the last video, I said I was very intrigued in seeing more of him, and even predicted that he would return. And lo and behold, I was right. Except for this time, they once again just made him a comedic relief. The best thing they could do with his character was apparently have him be an exposition dump and just act as a tag-along. If I knew his overall relevance to the show would be subjugated to such a lack of growth, it makes me wonder why he was even put into the show in the first place. However, there is a slight amount of hope for his character at the end of the season, ultimately once again determining his fate to perhaps another season, which makes his character literally not have an arc. Lastly, Major was also a character that really lacked any involvement until the final episode of the show, with her really only being given time to shine in fight scenes she didn't have to partake in, or the aforementioned short discussion she had with the opposing force at the end of the show. I'm also not saying that the time she did have to shine was bad by any means. In fact, she remains very much a stern and passionate leader. There's even a moment in the climax that summarizes her character in a couple sentences. I just wish we got to see more of it. This was the main gripe I had with the show last time. In fact, it's still a bit of an issue. However, I genuinely think the animation and art style was a major improvement from the first season. I believe this was largely due to the co-director of the show, Shinji Aramaki, having now act as the lead director of the second season. Aramaki is especially proficient in works that specialize in CGI, such as Appleseed, Starship Troopers, and Ultraman. This was also helped due to the production studio Solar Digital Arts having worked on Blade Runner Black Lotus the previous year, with that show having a much more sleeker and more hyper-realistic animation style when compared to the first season of SAC 2045.
Hey yo, what the fuck? Don't litter.
Their work and experience on Black Lotus is reflected in SAC 2045's second season, through improved visuals ranging from higher quality textures, smoother shadows, sharper lighting, tighter camera work, and more appropriate use of reflections. In fact, if this was the animation from the start, I doubt the controversy surrounding the show would have been as prominent, as such an improvement works in favor of illustrator Ilya Kushinov's vivid yet vivacious character designs, with my previous criticism of the overabundance of his character's blank stares and lack of facial movement mostly being done away with via a clear increase of animation done to their faces. Additionally, my previous issue with odd and empty use of framing has been improved a ton, likely due to the better lighting, cinematography, and using set pieces to its advantage. Honestly, it makes me wonder why Kenji Kamiyama was even asked to direct the first season when he is clearly more comfortable in a 2D environment based on his track record. Lastly, I'd once again like to touch upon the action via the animation, as again, I think it's one of the show's most obvious strengths, as the motion capture really helps sell the weight of cyborgs or purposeful lack thereof, with this season focusing more so on a gun-fu-like approach with increments of intense tactical gunfights and chase sequences ranging from urban cityscapes to massive unfinished government projects. However, still, I prefer the next installment returns to the two-dimensional approach, with perhaps an evolution to the formula as seen with some of the medium's recent works via a hybrid of 3D and 2D. The second season of SAC 2045 has satisfied me to a certain extent. The plot comes full circle, with heavy philosophical implications that I am still thinking of as I record this. It also puts an emphasis on its team's interactions to invoke more drama, whilst also improving its previously dull and lifeless 3D visuals thanks to a more experienced CG director. Also, the opening and the credits music are just both bangers. Honestly, I still don't think it's perfect as a whole package, but God knows how long we'll be waiting for the next Ghost in the Shell project. I just hope it's not a slot machine or a gacha game, please. But as a continuation, as well as conclusion to a completely new tale in the Ghost in the Shell mythos, was it worth the wait? I have my answer, but I want you to find your answer, and maybe even leave that answer in the comments down below. As always, I love reading what you have to say in the comment section, so please don't be shy to add to this conversation. I have another video dedicated to a much more niche show in the works coming likely in the next few weeks, so stay tuned for that. But other than that, I think I'll see you next time. Have a great rest of your day, and goodbye.